Good evening and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. Tonight, it's an election that the Prime Minister has said not just India but the world is watching. Why is that so important in an election in what's not even a state? Delhi, a city-state, why has it become one of national and international impact? What are the interesting trends emerging? Is this truly an election now where caste has become irrelevant? Is it a battle of class? Also, will a rapidly rising neo-middle class make Delhi key in their election aspirations this time as well? Will what Delhi does today increasingly become what the cities of India will do tomorrow? Well, joining me for more on this, I'm glad to welcome some new guests to the NDTV Dialogues. I've also got some old hands with me, but first Dr Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, a political scholar, Vice President of the BJP. He also heads a BJP think tank, Public Policy Research. I'm also joined by Professor Ashis Nandy, well-known political sociologist. Also, Mr. Chandra Bhan Prasad, writer, thinker with a keen perspective on caste issues. Ashutosh, journalist turned politician with AAP. He contested in the last Lok Sabha elections. And another first-time guest on the Dialogues, Amitabh Dubey, Director, India Research, which focuses on issues of politics and governance. Thank you all very much for joining me on the show. Dr. Sahasrabuddhe, the city-state of Delhi. Is what we're seeing in Delhi a battle of class, ideology or personalities? Because if you listen to the media, it's all three things and yet none of these things. Why do you think it's such a high-stake and high-impact battle? How would you see it?
I believe it is more of a battle of personalities because of the issues that are coming to the fore. I mean, if you look at the way the campaigns were conducted right from the Lok Sabha election onwards, I mean all the Vidhan Sabha elections that happened in between, I believe identity issues are taking a back seat. And in that context, I believe the caste and even class is perhaps melting. I mean, these issues no more bother the normal, the ordinary voter. What he is concerned about is what exactly am I going to get out of the verdict of this election. And the aspirational classes, and I must tell you over here that the aspirational classes are not confined only to the middle class. Any person who is having a cell phone, in a way the cell phone has become a symbol of aspiration, because it can work him in multiple ways and it can take him anywhere for that matter. And therefore, all these classes, and maybe you are aware that there are 95 crore cell phone owners in India, which is a huge number. Yeah. So, that is why I believe all the class and caste considerations, which are in a way also related to the identity issues, are taking a back seat.
Ashutosh, coming here, someone who's fully involved in this political battle, the Lok Sabha elections were pitched as a presidential contest. Do you see the same happening in the Delhi election? And in a sense, does that mean that both parties don't really differ on key issues? For instance, whether they're talking about free housing, whether they're talking about free water, electricity subsidies. In fact, both the BJP and Congress have also come in with cheaper power, cheaper water in line with what AAP is proposing. Do you think that's a good deal for the voter?
See, we have to see this entire phenomenon in a different perspective altogether, because in Delhi, what happened, the mass movement against the corruption has turned into the political party. And this political party has a different commitment and a different ideology and a different perception also. When we say that Aam Aadmi Party is talking about that the sanity in Indian political system has to be brought back, because there is a lot of insanity which has crept into the political establishment. During the last 3 months, if you see, Aam Aadmi Party has been harping only on the basic issues. We started the Delhi Dialogue, which is an innovative concept of the manifesto making and interaction with the stakeholders of Delhi. We started a dialogue with the youth. Then we divided into 8 chapters: youth, women, electricity, the rural Delhi, and all these issues.
I'm glad you like dialogues.
Yeah. So, and we were surprised to see that the people were very, very actively participating in this. Not only people who belong to the urban India, but also those people who lived into Jhuggi and Jhopadi. They came up with some wonderful ideas that how their life can be made better. So, whereas we did not indulge in any kind of negative politics at all. You might say that this election might be seen as a contest between Kiran Bedi versus Arvind Kejriwal. But the fact is, Arvind Kejriwal also symbolizes the aspirations of the new India, as well as he is a rebel against the political establishment too.
But Ashutosh, I'm going to throw this question open to everyone, but just to ask you first. Last time, corruption, the battle against corruption united classes. You saw support coming to you from all across the board. This time that's changed. In fact, many have described this election as a battle between classes as well. And Mr. Kejriwal has said, why do you call them the underclass? They are the true residents of Delhi. But people are talking about the 60% of Delhi which lives on below 15,000 rupees a month, and that's where the core support base of AAP is. So your focus this time is not anti-corruption so much as cheap water and power.
See, the three things which we have been talking about in this election, and in every rally and every Jan Sabha, every Nukkad Sabha, one has been that how in 49 days the Aam Aadmi Party government has lessened, or rather has lessened corruption in Delhi. The police has stopped.
That's of course only what you people. There's no survey. There's no actual proof of that.
No, let me tell you. During, if you see, at least I can talk about myself. I have been focusing only one issue. One is corruption. That how Aam Aadmi Party, during Aam Aadmi Party government, the police stopped taking bribes. The MCD officers stopped taking bribes. All the dalals disappeared from the government offices. Secondly, we talked about how we slashed electricity bills by half. Thirdly, we talked about how we made water available free of cost.
Ashutosh, I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, but let me get in Chandra Bhan Prasad on that. Chandra Bhan ji, do you agree with that? Do you think people this time are voting on the basis of anti-corruption, or has it become a class issue? And it's interestingly that, of course, the so-called Dalit leader Mayawati is now almost invisible from the Delhi political scene.
It is not caste, it is not class, it is a new breed, caste, class, breed, caste, class, cross.
It's a hybrid which has emerged now.
Yeah. So, before this hybrid, as our friend was saying, screen mobile phone is a better symbol of progress than identity. So, those who can sell this dream are destined to rule. And Dalit politicians, OBC politicians should know this.
Professor Nandy, do you agree that, do you think this is, that it's a new hybrid which is in tune with modern India, and that's what perhaps the old style politicians who relied on identity politics haven't woken up to? So perhaps Mr. Modi and Mr. Kejriwal, very different new age politicians, have tapped into this, and that's what's going to define what happens in Delhi.
Yes and no, because in Delhi roughly 40% of the people stay in slums, and these slums are divided into ghettos. These are communities, not atomized individuals like in American slums, for instance, or families. These are proper communities. The constituency which I have been visiting for the last few days, Kirari, is clearly that kind of a thing, and I am sure every Delhi constituency is like this, particularly in Old Delhi, but even in New Delhi. And this kind of configuration forces you to always respond to identity questions, whether you like it or not. You might make a slip and talk about the what was it that Agarwal's thing?
The Gotra.
Gotra. You can refer to Gotra and be caught in that use of this term. But that is only part of the story. The very way, the way they reacted to the thing is an indicator that they don't want to lose the vote of a community. And I would suspect that communities are still very, very important. It is communities will decide which way they would vote.
It's interesting that you got that sub-identity for a party which is beyond identity, but Amitabh Dubey come in on that aspect, that it's, even though it's all couched in modern ideology, modern campaigning, Arvind Kejriwal has made it a point to say, look, we are the only party which has given so many tickets to Purvanchalis. That's in a sense out of an old politician's handbook, as it were. But the other aspect was when we talk about the middle class or the new middle class, the rising aspiration, has been that traditionally Indian politicians have stayed away from class wars because the middle class has never voted. Now we're seeing them involved both in terms of voting more and also being involved as candidates. So somebody, Kiran Bedi is a recognizable face, Arvind Kejriwal is a recognizable face with middle class backgrounds. Do you think that's the change?
I think there isn't an easy separation between class and caste. And if you look at the middle class, they're still, if you look at the numbers, overwhelmingly upper caste. Just because something is not being expressed in the language of class doesn't mean there isn't a class element to it. So especially in cities where some of these identities become fuzzier, you have politics of occupational groups in many cities, Bombay, Delhi, some of the cities in UP, and these interests are often class interests that are not expressed in class terms. If you just look at the bigger national picture just for a second, the Congress and the BJP, if you look at their support base, traditionally there has been a very strong class element to who votes for which party. This is broken down a little bit in the case of the Congress in 2009 and 2014. The Congress got pretty much support from across the income ladder, a pretty high support in 2009 and a low support in 2014. But the BJP still has an upper income tilt. In the Hindi belt, it's pretty evenly spread. But if you look at it nationally, the BJP is still very much an upper class party, even if it's not expressed in the language of class. So I think it's easy to sort of overlook how important class is, even though politics is expressed in different terms.
Do you think the anti-corruption battle in this thing, what AAP had propounded at that time when they had again done well, the BJP is single largest, do you think that's taken a back seat? Do you find it interesting that how AAP's whole election campaign has also changed? In fact, some have compared it and said, well, why don't you do, you're doing what Jayalalitha does in Tamil Nadu, you're just more sophisticated about it. Everything is free, so it's just another SOP to the voter.
See, about an year ago, or rather before the Lok Sabha election, corruption was very much an issue because people were not knowing as to who exactly they can be really relying upon, who can sincerely make some efforts to do away with corruption. And now here we have a government under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who himself has the courage to say that neither will I indulge in corruption nor will I allow anybody else to indulge in corruption. This is not a small statement. I mean, this is a very profound statement. It's a commitment, and the history is there for everybody to see. Last 7 months or 8 months, whatever the BJP government is in power at center, we certainly are not at the receiving end of any allegations about corruption. I mean, that much our opponents will also have to accept. Coming to the other states also, I mean, our performances in most of the states, I can say, here and there some cases might have happened, but generally speaking, we come across as a party which provides clean government and an efficient government, a democracy that delivers.
Ashutosh, did that actually make your battle more difficult? If you remember in the last election when you had that infamous poster which came up, which was very embarrassing for AAP, that Modi for PM, Arvind Kejriwal for CM. In that sense, did this make your battle more difficult? Did you have to go back to much more traditional thinking when you talk about whether it's offering a welfare state, as it were, where adopting ideas which perhaps you would not have talked so much about earlier, with this whole raising the Gotra, talking about Purvanchalis? In that sense, how is AAP rising above identity? Why are you harping on giving so many tickets to Purvanchalis if you're above this?
Because this is a party which doesn't have money. This is the party who doesn't have the musclemen. This is the party who doesn't believe in distribution of liquor and the money during the elections. Now, you will be surprised to know that we could put up the advertisements on the television only for the last 2 days because it's so expensive, we can't even think about it. So, what we have to do, we have to always, and we always have to think ahead of the rest. And that's where the problem lies with the BJP. BJP could win Haryana, Maharashtra, Jharkhand and the JNK because they were contesting against the conventional political parties. You could gauge their move, but you can't gauge the move of a political party whose leadership is unconventional and whose base is also unconventional in that sense. So
you're saying that it is a fact that your core support this time So you're saying it is a fact then that your core support this time is from not perhaps the middle class. You're saying the class which is not affected by a 49 days rule.
See, I will not be honest if I say that the middle class, because last time middle class was very much with us. This time middle class was a bit upset because Arvind has resigned. But in the last 2 weeks, the middle class started coming back to us. Secondly, the Modi phenomenon was not as powerful last time, and the BJP and the Modi had given some alternative to the middle class. Thirdly, what happened that this, if you see the profile of the BJP during the parliamentary elections, 70% and above, like the upper caste, has voted overwhelmingly to BJP. And this 70% upper caste is also partly is a rich class and is an affluent class and is an upper middle class. Whereas our voter, like last time we won 9 out of 12 reserve seats.
But I think this cannot be the yardstick because for that matter, I mean, our opponents may not accept it, but the BJP has always been winning maximum number of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe seats. There is a history to see that. So, to say that the entire scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community is perhaps supporting BJP, I mean, this
supporting up. In fact, interesting.
No, in our case, I am saying,
okay.
When it comes to Lok Sabha, if you look at the record, most of the reserved seats are grabbed by the BJP. But then we also know the limitations of this because it's a combination of the SC, ST plus the other classes, which makes it a winning proposition. That also happens. I mean, let us not give discount to this particular
in fact, in UP this time, and just
and secondly, just one point which Ashutosh made, the distinctive features of AAP, I think within a period of 1 year, have almost lost. I mean, they don't have anything to say about that. They are a distinct political party as such. All kinds of allegations are there. He is talking about lack of funds. I mean, I need not repeat the kind of 2 crore donation that they received in the way it was deposited in their account. So all things are there. I mean, they cannot play the game and say that we are going to change the rule. They are now a part of the game. They cannot anymore change the rules or talk about changing the rule. Revolution cannot happen in this way.
So the 49-day revolution, but let's see, now 5-year will not be a revolution. I think that's the point. But Chandra Bhan ji, taking the case in Uttar Pradesh, for example, where I think the BJP confounded all estimates by the fact that you saw young people across caste voting for the BJP, and that's a big change in a state like UP, which is still very much caste driven.
In Dalit conversations, it is argued that if a particular party wins most of Dalit constituencies, then the upper caste or non-Dalits have liked this trend more. You know, a radical Dalit is unlikely to win. Number two, in this election something very mysterious is happening. The middle class, a large part of that supported AAP last time.
Yes.
They have completely, or I can't say completely, but a great number of them are voting for BJP. Educated professionals, doctors, engineers, whereas AAP support base has been jhuggi, jhopadi, unauthorized colonies, poor traders, small traders, all this. Why is that happening? Corruption is not an issue, Lokpal is not an issue. So AAP has taken a big risk, in fact, because it cannot become a bigger socialist than Congress party. And that's what middle class is saying, that AAP is trying to become a Mamata Banerjee like socialist kind of, ultra left kind of thing. That's acquisitions. So AAP has taken a risk.
No, AAP has not taken a
No,
risk.
but let me just, Professor Nandi, because interestingly, Mamata Banerjee has come out saying that she supports AAP and saying that telling everyone to support AAP.
Nothing surprising.
And the JDU and the Samajwadi Party. So you have a whole band, Ashutosh supporting
They have got an umbrella of the ex-socialist and communist.
See, to be pro-poor, I don't think it's an abhishap.
Not at all.
Certainly
But
not. Certainly not.
But the BJP is also saying it's pro-poor.
But
the BJP also is pro-poor. I just want to get to Professor Nandi, but just to bring on those issues we've raised around the table so far, Professor Nandi, your perspective, because you've studied this for a while, and the whole corruption and caste angle has got you into trouble once, so I won't ask you.
That was his gift.
That is his gift, so I won't ask you about that again. But come in on that corruption not being an issue, and it's true that Arvind Kejriwal brought on the government for Jan Lokpal, but Jan Lokpal now is just part of a dialogue. It's not the key issue anymore. So that's gone on the back burner. It's now different. AAP has become like the other political parties, maybe to different degrees.
That's not
but
bad.
It's not a revolutionary anymore.
For example, this idea of a totally corruption-free Delhi. The only totally corruption-free city I know of in the whole world is Singapore, and that's a police state. Now, I don't want a totally corruption-free city, because there should be loopholes in the culture of the state, in the way you institutionalize certain things. There should be loopholes. We are dealing with human beings. Secondly, I would be happy with a less corrupt society, a moderately corrupt society, not the kind of corruption we have in large-scale larceny. The other point I want to make is this, that the aspiration you are talking of is primarily a function of groups which have entered the middle class or its upper echelons only in one generation. Now, only it is confined to that. The middle class in India has expanded by 500%. more than 500%. And that is an extremely labile middle class. They have just entered middle class and they are extremely insecure about.
They could actually sink back down.
That they might pull back. And many of the conflicts you see are centered around that insecurity. And they are the ones who are labile. So, it is not the old established middle class, not the Sahasrabuddhes in Maharashtra, but the new ones, who are coming in the non-established middle class are there. And that, I think, is determining the results of elections over the last 15, 20 years. I would say a little longer, 30 years or so.
In fact, that's very volatile.
That is most impatient.
It's a volatile class.
That's a class.
Very important.
Most impatient.
Every party which wins an election, its honeymoon ends after 2.5, roughly midway between the tenure. When Rajiv Gandhi has his record majority, much larger than the one Modi had, his honeymoon ended even before 2.5 years. After 2 years, it began to erode. So that's the part of
Shekhar Gupta calls VP Singh the original Kejriwal. But let me just get to Amitabh Dubey, because the interesting point is that this whole neo middle class, as Prime Minister Modi puts it, this volatile, impatient class was some said a creation of the Congress, because it perhaps began with 1991 liberalization, when you had a whole new class entering what was pretty much a static term before that. I mean, you were born middle class, you grew up middle class, and that was it, the gates were closed. Yet it's that class which has turned most violently on the Congress and what it would see as its policies of welfare state, rights or entitlements versus actual rights and working. So that's the class which is going to be the nemesis of any political party. Do you think that's also the class which has grown impatient with Prime Minister Modi's government perhaps in 8 months? So many analysts would say that the BJP perhaps miscalculated by not having elections much sooner in Delhi to enjoy that honeymoon period, that Prime Minister Modi is only facing a tough fight because they delayed the election so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's entirely clear if you look at how the middle class, including new middle class, has grown over the last few years. It's a product of what began in 1991, Manmohan Singh reforms and so on and so forth. So in that sense, it is the, some kind of a full circle. It's also this class that clearly moved in favor of the BJP in the national picture. Now, there's no doubt that there's aspiration, the language of aspiration has become entrenched, particularly as you go up the caste and class ladder. But it's easy to be aspirational at the national level, but when it comes to state level politics, you actually want something, and which is why you've seen all three parties promising freebies and so on, because that's a reality. That's what people are looking for to make their lives better. So I think just because this new middle class has become a recognized phenomenon doesn't mean that the politics of patronage or promises is going to be replaced entirely by a vague aspiration.